The Whisper didn't fly, it slid. It was a Crimson Dawn modified S-91X Stygian pinnace, a vessel so black it seemed to devour starlight, its surfaces treated with sensor-absorbent coatings, and its engine baffled to a near-silent whisper. Inside, it was a study in lethal luxury. The decks were polished black durasteel. The pilot and co-pilot seats were upholstered in deep crimson synth leather that molded to the body, and the ambient lighting was a soft blood-red glow. A fully stocked armory, a medical suite superior to anything on the Wandering Star, and private quarters that were sparse but pristine. It was a tool, not a home. A weapon gifted by a warlord. Their new outfits were laid out in the armory lockers, form-fitting tactical gear in matte black, with segmented armor plating at the shoulders, forearms, and shins. Crimson piping traced the seams, and subtle, intricate gold filigree, a mark of Kira's personal favor, edged the high collars and ran down the sleeves. The material was lightweight, blaster-resistant, and breathed like second skin. It was the uniform of predators. Zara ran a finger over the gold trim. Feels like a cage. It's a better cage, Kael said, pulling his on. It fit perfectly. One with teeth. They stood in the Whisper's cockpit, the holographic star map painting their sharp new lines in soft light. They'd asked for and been granted a shakedown cruise, a test of the hyperdrive, a chance to breathe without Kira or Silas watching, a chance to be just them again, even if them was now something profoundly different. The Whisper's hyperdrive engaged with a sound like a drawn breath, not the rattling roar of the star. The blue tunnel outside was a smoother, deeper shade, streaking past the viewport like liquid silk. They pushed it, running nav computer stress tests, checking stealth capabilities against simulated Imperial patrols. The ship was flawless, a ghost. It was everything they'd ever needed. It felt like a betrayal. "We should find her," Zara said, breaking a long silence. She was staring at a secondary readout, but her eyes were unfocused. "The star. We should get her back." Kael looked over from the co-pilot's seat. "Kira said she was scrap on Ord Mantell." "Kira says a lot of things." Zara's voice was low, a simmering ember. "The Empire took her. They've taken everything else. I'm not letting them keep that, too. It's ours." Kael understood. It wasn't about the ship. It was about the last piece of before. The last artifact of the people they used to be. It was sentimentality, the luxury Kira warned against. It was also the only act of defiance they had left that was purely theirs. Ord Mantell is an Imperial hub. Scrapyards run by the Navy. It's a fortress. Zara finally looked at him. Her golden eyes hard in the red light. "So is the temple. We got out. We can get in." He saw the resolve, the dangerous glint that had been there since she crushed Vosk, since she killed the 9th sister. It was the part of her that scared him. It was also the part that kept them alive. He nodded once. "We'll need a plan. And not from Crimson Dawn." They found their plan and their confrontation in the floating tomb, a cantina on Sermeria, a dusty, forgotten rock in the outer rim. The air was thick with smoke, the clientele a mix of miners, smugglers, and syndicate muscle. They stood out in their pristine black and crimson, drawing sidelong glances like fresh meat in a crate dragon's den. Zara nursed a glass of something clear and potent, the spice craving a dull throb she was learning to ignore by focusing on a sharper pain, purpose. Kael was negotiating with a sweating, pinch-faced human in a stained Imperial Logistics officer's uniform, a Lieutenant Dre, who smelled of cheap brandy and cheaper ethics. The YT-1300 designation Wandering Star was processed into Bay 47 sub-level Gamma, Dre whispered, his eyes darting. "Heavy security. Automated turrets, a platoon of stormtroopers, biometric scans. You'd have better luck stealing the Emperor's underwear." "We're not paying you for better luck," Kael said, his voice devoid of warmth. He slid a stack of credit chips across the sticky table. "We're paying you for codes, schedules, and a blind eye." Dre licked his lips, his fingers hovering over the chips. "The blind eye'll cost extra. And the extraction. That's on you." "I hear nothing, see nothing." "That's the idea," Zara said, her voice cutting through the cantina's din. It was then that the Za-Fen gang decided to make their move. The Za-Fen, a rival syndicate to Crimson Dawn, had been watching. 2 young, well-equipped operatives, flashing new credits, asking about Imperial scrap? It smelled like opportunity or weakness. A Nautilon with gang tattoos snaking down his head tentacles sidled up, flanked by two brutish Dautans. Pretty threads, he sneered, his voice a wet gurgle. Crimson Dawn's putting its babies in new clothes. Cute. You're in Za-Fen space now. That means attacks. Credits. Weapons. The ship you flew in on. Zara didn't look up from her drink. Piss off. The Nautilan's smile vanished. He gestured. One Dautan reached for Zara's shoulder. What happened next was a blur of calculated violence. Kael moved first. He didn't stand. He kicked the table into the Dautan's knees, hearing a satisfying crack. As the giant roared and stumbled, Kael was already up, the vibroblade from his thigh sheath finding the soft spot under the Dautan's jaw. A fountain of thick blue blood arced across the neighboring booth. Zara was faster. Her hand dipped to her boot and came up holding not a blaster, but a vibro shiv. As the second Dautan lunged, she dropped low, letting his bulk pass over her, and dragged the shiv across his inner thigh, severing the femoral artery. Hot blood sprayed in a torrent, drenching her and the Nautilin. The Dautan collapsed, gurgling, clutching at the fatal wound. The Nautilin went for his blaster. Zara was already in his space. She grabbed his wrist, twisted it until the bone snapped with a wet pop, and drove her shiv up through his palate into his brain. His large black eyes glazed over instantly. She let the body drop. The cantina had gone dead silent. 5 seconds. 3 bodies. A pool of blood spreading across the floor, mingling with spilled drinks. Zara wiped her shiv on the Nautilin's tunic, her breathing barely elevated. She looked at the terrified Lieutenant Dre, who was frozen, a credit chip halfway to his pocket. You were saying about the schedules? She asked, her voice calm. Dre finished the deal in a panicked whisper, handed over a data chip, and fled. As they left the cantina, stepping over the cooling bodies, Kael looked at Zara. The gold trim on her collar was spattered with blue Dautan blood. You're getting messy. She glanced at her reflection in the Whisper's obsidian hull. A panther in crimson and black, painted with the blood of her enemies. It's not messy. It's a statement. The heist was a symphony of precision and brutality. Using Dre's codes, they ghosted the Whisper into Ord Mantell's orbital traffic, its stealth systems making it a phantom on the scanners. They infiltrated the scrapyard through a maintenance shaft Dre had conveniently forgotten to seal, moving through the labyrinth of gutted starships like vengeful shadows. The Wandering Star sat in Bay 47 Ampere's wounded beast surrounded by vulture droids. Her hull was scarred, her hyperdrive ripped out, her cockpit canopy cracked. She looked small. Pathetic. Zara felt a pang in her chest that was closer to grief than sentiment. The stormtrooper platoon was taken out not with blasters, but with silence. Kael, using techniques Silas had barely begun to hint at, focused on the Force not as a tool for movement, but for suppression. He created a sphere of utter silence around a pair of guards, then snapped their necks with sharp physical twists before they could make a sound. It was cold. Efficient. Jedi didn't do that. Zara handled the automated turrets. She didn't slice them. She didn't disable them. She reached out with the Force, feeling their targeting systems, a chaotic web of electronic impulses, and poured her anger into them. The turrets spasmed, their barrels heating up, overloading and exploding in showers of sparks and shrapnel, taking out nearby power conduits in a chain reaction of cascading failures. They were on the star's ramp, the familiar greasy smell of its interior hitting them like a physical blow when the air turned cold. You are persistent vermin. Inquisitor Marok stood at the far end of the bay, having stepped from the shadows like a piece of the dark given form. His black armor absorbed the emergency strobe lights. His spinning double-bladed crimson lightsaber ignited with a screech that seemed to tear at the mind. Run the pre-flight, Zara hissed, shoving Kael towards the cockpit. I'll hold him. Like hell, Kael growled, igniting his blue lightsaber. The familiar hum was a shock in the metallic space, a beacon of a dead past. Marok didn't run. He flowed. He was a whirlwind of red blades, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Zara met his charge, her purple blade a violent slash of color. The clash was deafening, showers of sparks erupting where plasma met plasma. She was fast, her Ataru a frenetic dance, but Marok was a machine. His form was a brutal, efficient killing style she didn't recognize, No Jedi form, no Sith tradition, just pure refined murder. He batted her blade aside with contemptuous force, a backhanded fist encased in black armor catching her square in the ribs. She heard a sickening crack, felt white-hot agony lance through her chest. She stumbled, gasping, her lungs refusing to draw air. Kael cried out, throwing himself between them, his blue saber meeting Merrick's spinning onslaught. He fought defensively, a desperate gem so each parry rattling his bones. He was holding, but just barely. Marok was toying with them. "You have grown," Marok rasped, his voice like grinding stones. "More fear. More anger. Good. The fruit is ripe for the plucking." He disengaged from Kael with a feint, then in a move too fast to follow, kicked Zara's legs out from under her. She hit the deck hard, the impact driving the shards of her broken ribs deeper. Before she could rise, his boot came down on her wrist, pinning her lightsaber hand. He raised his spinning blades for a decapitating strike. In that frozen instant, Kael saw it all. The temple. The running. Nar Shaddaa. Teth. The broken body of the Toydarian captain. Zara covered in blood, eyes wild with dark power. Zara shaking in her bunk from nightmares. "Zara, here, about to be erased." Something snapped. A prohibition so deeply ingrained it was part of his soul shattered. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was a reaction. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage, not just at Merrick, but at the Empire, at the Jedi who failed them, at the galaxy, at himself, erupted from a core of terror he'd kept buried. His hands, empty of his saber, shot forward. Not in a push. In a claw. White, jagged forks of force lightning erupted from his fingertips, screaming across the bay. They were untrained, wild, more a burst of raw electrostatic discharge than the controlled streams of a Sith Lord, but they were powerful. The bolts slammed into Merrick's chest, not piercing his armor, but washing over it in a crackling, blinding web of energy. He convulsed, his spinning saber faltering, a grunt of surprise and pain forced from his lips. The killing strike on Zara was aborted. Marok's helmeted head turned, the red lenses focusing on Kael with a new, hungry intensity. "So, the boy has teeth," he snarled, his voice buzzing with residual energy. Zara, swimming through a haze of pain, saw her chance. With her free hand, she reached to the small of her back, to the 3 vibroblades sheathed there. She didn't throw them. She guided them with the last dregs of her strength and a whispered plea to the dark side. They shot from her hand, not in an arc, but in a straight, brutal line aimed at the gap between Merrick's helmet and his shoulder armor. He sensed them. At the last millisecond, he wrenched his still smoking body to the side and raised a hand. The 3 blades stopped in midair, quivering an inch from his neck, held by his will. He smiled behind his mask. "Predictable." He was distracted. Kael, screaming a raw, wordless cry, charged. He fired his blaster one-handed, not at Merrick, but at the Inquisitor's lightsaber hilt. The bolt, perfectly placed, struck the emitter. The weapon, already stressed by the lightning and Merrick's momentary loss of control, exploded. The blast was concussive, shattering the remaining blades of the saber and sending shards of superheated metal and cracked kyber crystal in all directions. Marok roared, his arm flung back, his hand a mangled, smoking ruin. Enraged, he turned his full attention on Kael. He lunged, a battering ram of black armor and fury, tackling Kael to the deck. He pinned him, his good hand closing around Kael's throat, lifting his head to slam it back into the durasteel. "You dare, you filth!" Kael's vision swam, the edges going dark. He clawed at the armored hand, his breath cut off. A new sound cut through the bay. Not a lightsaber. The crackle hum of twin electrostaffs. Lady Kira descended from a maintenance gantry above, a silent, graceful avenger in her own black and crimson. She landed behind Marok, her weapons already in motion. He sensed her, began to turn, but he was wounded, unbalanced, and focused on Kael. The first staff caught him across the back, discharging enough voltage to stun a rancor. His armor absorbed most of it, but his muscles seized. The second strike was a ruthless, precise thrust to the back of his knee, buckling his leg. He stumbled, his grip on Kael loosening. As he turned, snarling to face this new threat, Kira didn't engage in a duel. She didn't give him the dignity of a warrior's death. She drew a sleek silver blaster from her hip in one fluid motion and, at point-blank range, placed a single overcharged bolt directly into the center of his helmet's faceplate. The helmet didn't just shatter, it vaporized in a flash of molten ceramite and superheated bone. Marok's head snapped back, what was left of his face, a ruin of cauterized flesh and splintered skull, visible for a horrifying instant before his body, nerveless, collapsed to the deck with a final heavy thud. Silence, broken only by the sputtering of damaged electronics and Zara's ragged, wet gasps. Kira holstered her blaster and knelt by the smoldering corpse. With clinical detachment, she pried a data panel from his gauntlet. A few swift commands, and she deleted files, her lips a thin line of concentration. He was greedy, she said almost to herself. He hadn't filed his full report on you. Wanted the glory of the capture for himself. Fortunate for us. She stood looking at them. Kael was pushing himself up, clutching his throat, staring at his own hands as if they belonged to someone else. Zara was trying to sit up, blood trickling from her mouth, her face gray with pain. "The officer you met, Dre, is one of mine," Kira said, her voice cutting through their shock. "He alerted me. Loyalty has its rewards." She tossed the now blank data panel onto Merrick's corpse. "You two are a magnet for inquisitors. A liability. Or an opportunity." She walked over to Zara, producing a colto injector from her belt and jabbing it into her neck without asking. The immediate cold rush of healing chemicals made Zara gasp. The Imperial Security Bureau has openings. 2 junior analyst positions, newly created. Dre's contact in the ISB can get you in. You have the skills. Slicing, investigation, a cleanish record I can fabricate. More importantly, you have a perspective they lack. Kael found his voice, hoarse and raw. "The ISB? You want us to join the Empire?" "I want you to infiltrate the Empire," Kira corrected, her eyes gleaming. "You will be my eyes and ears inside the security apparatus. You will report directly to me. On your downtime, you will continue to work for Crimson Dawn. You will have access to Imperial sites, secrets, personnel files. You will be the ultimate deep cover agents." Zara coughed, wiping blood from her lips. "And if we say no?" Kira looked from Zara to the corpse of Merrick, then to the battered, stolen, wandering star. "You are covered in blood. You've just killed an Inquisitor, your old ship is a wreck, and the only home you have is the one I gave you. No is a luxury you spent on Nar Shaddaa." Her tone softened, but it was the softness of a vibroblade. "This is your path to power. Real power. Not hiding. Not just surviving. Influencing. You want to hurt the Empire? Get inside it. Learn its secrets. Bleed it dry from the veins." She extended a hand, not to help Zara up, but as a gesture of partnership. "I will train you myself. As I was trained. You have raw talent. I will hone it. You will become my new enforcers. My shadows within shadows." Kael looked at Zara. Her eyes were clouded with pain and colto, but the fury was still there, banked now, focused. He thought of his lightning, of the terrifying, exhilarating power of it. He thought of the things they'd done, the lines they'd crossed. There was no going back to the gutter. There was only forward, deeper into the dark. He gave a slow, grim nod. Zara reached up and took Kira's hand. It was cold and strong. "Train us," she rasped. Kira smiled her thin, sharp smile. "Good. First lesson, never let sentimentality jeopardize a mission." She turned to the wandering star. "You came for this relic. A noble, foolish gesture. Now we erase it." She gestured. From the shadows, a team of Crimson Dawn demolitionists emerged. They placed thermal charges on the star's frame. "No!" Zara cried out, struggling to rise. "It's a loose end," Kira said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "The Empire will look for it. They will find this." She handed Zara a small beacon. "I took the liberty of salvaging the nav computer core. Your memories are in here. Not the ship. The charge is detonated. The wandering star, their home, their sanctuary, their last tie to a dead life, erupted in a silent, expanding ball of orange fire and shrapnel within the bay. The shockwave rattled the whisper. When the fire cleared, only twisted, glowing metal remained. Zara watched, her face a mask of ash and grief. The last piece of before was gone, vaporized. Kira placed a hand on her shoulder. "You mourn a coffin. I am offering you a throne." She turned to leave. "We depart immediately. Your new identities are being prepared. Your training begins tomorrow. Welcome to the dawn, my shadows. As they followed her back to the whisper, Kael's fingers brushed against Zara's. It was a small contact, hidden from view. It wasn't the Jedi code. It wasn't about attachment. It was an anchor in a sea of blood and fire. It was a silent promise. Whatever this dark path was, they would walk it together. The whisper slipped away from Ord Mantell, leaving behind a burning scrapyard and a dead inquisitor. Ahead lay Coruscant, the Imperial Center, and their new lives as ISB analysts, ghosts in the machine, enforcers for a syndicate, students of a woman trained by a Sith Lord whose name they didn't yet know. The past was ash. The future was a razor's edge dressed in Imperial gray and Crimson Dawn black. And in the quiet of the luxury stealth ship, Zara could still feel the ghostly hum of her purple lightsaber at her hip, a mournful song now accompanied by the hungry, whispering promise of the lightning Kael had unleashed. A new power, born not of light, but of the desperate, raging dark. To be continued. Thanks for sticking around. Like and subscribe, and also hit the bell icon to stay notified if you would like to follow Zara and Kael's journey. Until next time.